So friends, next in the series will be the Act of 1919 called Government of India Act or the Montagu-Chelmsford Reforms. Montagu being the Secretary of State and Chelmsford being the Governor General for India, right? So now the quick background to this act, like what led to the passing of this act. Number one, in 1914, World War I broke out and the British, with an aim to seek Indian help in the war, promised that some more concessions will be given to the Indians, as was there in the August Declaration, right? August Declaration given by the Governor General, right? Second, the birth of Home Rule League in 1916. There were two Home Rule Leagues, one by Annie Besant and the other by Tilak. So this Home Rule League was impressing upon the British that unless some better concessions are offered to the Indians, their aspirations are met, the Indians cannot help the British in this war effort. Besides this, internationally, Indian revolutionaries, they were now picking up their efforts. They were making a lot of efforts to expose the wrongdoings of the British at the international level. In Americas, there was Ghadar Party of Lala Hardayal, and then in Berlin there was Berlin Committee, right? So these organizations were exposing the wrongdoings of the British, and British have to come forth with some kind of reforms in India. So accordingly, a new act was formed. Before the act was passed, Montfort Committee was appointed in 1917. Montfort Committee was formed. Montfort means Montagu and Chelmsford. The one more specific reason is when in 1909 Minto-Morley reforms were passed, these were meant for 10 years. So in any case, a new act was due in 1919 and accordingly this act was now passed. Now coming to the main provisions of this act, the most important provision was introduction of provincial diarchy. Right, this was the most important provision of this act, and it was at the same time, it was the biggest limitation of the act. Now what is provincial diarchy? For the first time, the subjects of legislation were divided into central and provincial lists, right? It was so projected that now the power is going to be transferred to the Indian hands, at least at the provincial level, and then Indian will be trained and gradually there will be more transfer of power into the Indian hands. It will be a gradual process, not in one go. So now it was certified that on the subjects given in the central list, the Governor General will have the exclusive responsibility, authority, whereas on the provincial list, the provincial governors will seek opinion of Indian ministers. Remember, so far the idea of collective responsibility has not been introduced and there has not been a much extension of franchise. But yes, in whatsoever way the Indian ministers will be elected, they will give advice to the governors and then governors will act according to the advice given. But further the subjects were bifurcated into reserved subjects and transferred subjects. Reserved and transferred subjects. So it was now certified and clarified that for the reserved subjects, the governor either decide in his own discretion or seek the opinion of Governor General, whereas on the transferred subject, Indian ministers will be consulted. Now the bluff was that both finance as well as law and order, they were kept in the list of reserved subjects. So whatsoever is the power that was transferred to the Indian ministers, be it health, be it agriculture, be it sanitation, be it education, whatsoever was the department, none of these departments can act without required finances. So in that way, actually no power was transferred. So these were called sham reforms, that they have served no purpose for Indians. And these were then opposed by Swarajist Party or Swaraj Party that was formed in 1923 by Motilal Nehru and C.R. Das, right? Once Swaraj Party exposed the shortcomings of this provincial diarchy, the British appointed Muddyman Committee, in which even Muhammad Ali Jinnah was one of the members. But this Muddyman Committee, being a white dominated committee, gave the verdict in favor of continuing the same system. So there was not much change immediately, though it will be changed with the Act of 1935. This was basically the main provision. Besides this, there was a provision for bicameral legislature For the first time, a bicameral legislature was proposed, though it will come into existence later on. So these were the major provisions. Thank you and best of luck.